Blue Mountain Lake, and we are co-hosting, co-sponsoring this speaker series, first of which we had back in January. And our second speaker is Dr. William Tortolano from Vermont. He's a professor emeritus from St. Michael's College, and my old teacher, and I didn't mean anything by old. Let me just read you a brief bio. Dr. William Tortolano was professor of fine arts and music and college organist at St. Michael's College for over 48 years. That's 50, okay, 50 years. There we go. Update. He is author, composer, conductor, and organist, and has performed at Notre Dame in Paris. He was a visiting fellow at Cambridge University and had a fellowship at Yale University in medieval studies. As I mentioned also, he was my professor. I was in the chorale at St. Mike's when I was an undergrad, getting my journalism degree, actually. So back before I did all that, well, that he was my mentor and inspiration in the arts when I was at St. Mike's, and introduced me to my voice teacher in Boston, Madame Ila, who is unfortunately no longer with us, but was a huge influence on my career also as a performer. And just wonderful, writer and historian. Is that, yeah. So no further ado, Dr. William Tortolano.
George was in the St. Michael's College chorale, and had him as a student, and he had new solos at the time. My wife was, she died 8 years ago. My wife was an opera singer, concert, oratorio and opera, and she taught, and she was very selective what she said about her voice. And if she said, it's a smooth voice, that was like, wow. That's what she said about you. So, thank you. Now, I'm here also to announce my candidacy as president of the United States. So, before we get into this, the group of 7, in a way, is like the Hudson River School. They identified Canada through their paintings. When my granddaughter, my son lives in Alexandria, Virginia. My daughter lives in Virginia Beach, and my youngest son lives in Toronto. So he's a U.S. and Canadian citizen. So when this little girl said to me, Papa, she said, I just saw the movie Snow White. And I said, Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs? And she said, no. Snow White and the group of 7. I don't think any place in the United States they sell wine with a picture of, let's say, an American artist. But in Canada, you buy your wine and it has pictures of the group of 7. So before I start, I have many, many books, but I've got 2 books, not for sale, but you can buy them yourself. Mine or whatever, books on Canadian art, and these are some of my things that I've published. There's 2 books on the Lord Chant, 2 books that I brought on Christmas carols and stories of the carols, and some of the book is meant to be funny. So anyway, those are some things you can look at if you wish. Well, first of all, before we get started, I'm going to have some music played softly. It doesn't necessarily fit the pictures, but it's Canadian. The first one is by Claude Champagne, which means champagne. Claude Champagne wrote a suite, and this one is about fiddling. His father was a country fiddler. He was a classical composer, and he identified country fiddling. The second piece you'll be hearing as we watch the pictures is Nancy, what's her name, from Cape Breton. Nancy, forget the name, Natalie McMaster. She taps her feet, and she dances, and she plays the violin. The third one is the great jazz pianist Oscar Peterson from Canada, a black pianist, was playing some music inspired by Group of Seven. The next to the last piece is a jazz group that's inspired by the Group of Seven, and they have a picture that goes with each of their pieces, and we'll look at it. And at the end was "Oh Canada," and if you want, you can stand up. Well, first of all, and you have this to follow finish. Canadians respectfully call Indians and First Nation peoples, the First Nation people. This painting, although authentic in style, shows French Canadians dressed in characteristic Naskapi national clothes. First Nations culture was disappearing. J. Crawford Young was a regular British Army officer in the 97th Regiment. His unit came to Canada in 1825 and then moved to Montreal, Kingston, and Toronto. He was in Quebec, and I have to speak French because I'm at the University of Montreal. Young had a captain's rank and was promoted to major. He painted watercolor sketches of Quebec and the district outstation in the city. You can put the music on softly in the next picture. That's my son, Bill. Next picture. Okay. Paul Kane, my wife's name was Kane, K-A-N-E, was from Cork, Ireland. He settled in Toronto and worked as a painter. Like George Catlin in the United States, Kane wanted to paint First Nation people. Both knew that European culture would override native culture. He did a 3-year journey that took him across Canada to the Pacific. Upon his return, he worked on 500 sketches and artists and notes. Notice the flat had an elongated child. It was common for First Nation people to create this physical alteration of a body. Next. Cornelius Krieghoff was a Dutchman who worked in the United States and Canada. He moved to Montreal, Quebec in 1841 and returned and remained there for 40 years. He was a prolific painter of Canadian life genre, romantic depictions, farmers, kitchens, offices, Rondon, First Nation people, as well as still life and landscapes. Next. We will get to the Group of Seven. This is moving up to Canadian furniture was from Quebec and shows and is now a collector's dream. 18th century furniture was functional, but also authentic, artistic. A marriage contract included a dowry. This cabinet has symbolism. The first is painted as a symbol of plenty. Pot adorned brackets, baskets, and moldings and carvings of great skill with a Louis XV inspiration. A chest determined the true value of a couple's household belongings. This 18th century chest is multifunctional. It was a seat, a working table, a toilet table, and even a coffin. The surface was often painted with characteristic motifs, fruit tree, game birds, fish, a hunter's gun. Next. Joseph Legaré was a sign painter, gilder, and glass maker. He learned about painting as an art restorer. He chronicled major events, including fires, cholera, elections, and landscapes. Next. You can put the music up a little while real quick. Halifax, Nova Scotia has had a distinguished maritime artist tradition. One of its most famous was Joseph O'Brien, who was born in Cork, Ireland en route to Halifax. Next, one of Canada's most famous portraits is without a painter's name. Portrait of a Slave Girl by Francois de Beaucourt is in the McCord Museum in Montreal. Slavery was abolished in Canada in 1807. This painting dates from 1786. This is a portrait of the artist slave. She must have been one of the few slaves left in Canada at that time. The practice was abolished in the British colonies in 1807. She was living in Montreal as late in 1820s, Montreal. The arrangement of fruits in this painting is one of the earliest examples of still life painting in Canada. Next. This is as far as I go. Pine Forest, British Columbia, depicts the great mountains and terrain going to the Fraser River. It is by William Hunt. The artist captures the challenge of thick woods, almost impossible to penetrate. Travel was on foot or raft. Hine was born in Nottingham, England. His style includes his studies in London, and he must have known and been associated with the young artists who formed the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. He emigrated to Canada in 1852 and traversed the Rockies in 1865, following the route of the Overlanders, and sketched incidents on the way. Next. I hope you can hear everything I'm saying, okay? I'm only 93, so excuse me. Many Quebec artists were not French. Nevertheless, they spoke the language and lived the culture. One of the best was Maurice Cullen. This painting is titled La Vie from Quebec. Cullen knew and loved Cape Diamond and the Citadel in Quebec. One of the most difficult colors to paint for artists is white. Here, Cullen shows his mastery of snow. La Vie from Quebec is a fine and rare example of the artist's interpretation of Impressionism applied to the Quebec landscape. He ignored the conceptual purity of Impressionism, but in the fore and middle grounds used brilliant, pure white colors to crystallize and forms in winter light. He used small strokes of pure color and delicate blue-gray haze. Next. Novel in the Rupert Thompson. There were 7. They were inspired by Tom Thompson. And over the years, one left, one came, so there were a total of 10. But the founder was Tom Thompson. So it's Tom Thompson the Rupert. Tom Thompson lived a short life, 1877 to 1917. But during a short career as a painter, he created, inspired, and motivated a new Canadian identity. Canada is found in its land, especially that which was largely undiscovered. Brilliantly captured in plein air, Thompson saw a landscape that was unique and was pure Canada. The West Wind was painted in 1916-17. It evokes powerful emotions and the equivalent of the national anthem. Next, now there are 3 pictures that go with this. This is the group of 7. Although the label of the group of 7 was created in 1920, Tom Thompson is considered its founder and inspiration. He was a knowledgeable and inspired outdoorsman. His body was found floating in a river in his beloved Algonquin Park. Thompson had been dead 10 days. Was it an accident, murder, suicide? We do not know. His 7 friends were devastated. They all shared the same vision for Canada. They formed a common goal. The vision must continue. 3 of the men were English, 3 from Ontario, and 1 from Montreal. Before they disbanded in 1932, 3 others joined the group. Therefore, a total of 10 and Tom Thompson. Next picture. And next picture. Okay, now. The group of Thompson's work has a sense of hidden presence behind the landscapes of lakes and skies and ice-filled rivers. This uncanny identification of subject and object, the idea that some sort of being was inherent in the land, embodied the spiritual grail that Thompson and the group of 7 believed was the purpose of the true Canadian artist. Next. He loves to have trees like that as a sort of curtain or fence behind the scene. Next. If you ever find one of these, I'd like one. I can't afford it. But they were about $500,000. Next. A.Y. Jackson, Alexander Young Jackson, was the only member that was born in Quebec. He was fluent in French. He left Montreal because he felt it was indifferent to Canadian art. A.Y. painted more of Canada than any other member, virtually all the provinces and territories. Many works show the seasons in their transitional mode. Most often saw autumn with blazing colors, which Jackson caught so intimately in the red maple. Next. Lauren Harris of Ontario was a millionaire. He was exceptionally generous to the group of 7, organizing sketching excursions, purchasing paintings, and financing the studio building in Toronto, which is still there. Here, members of the group lived and worked free or for minimum expenses. His paintings could vary from extra portraits, impressionistic moods of Toronto, and most brilliantly works of art that combine Canada and theosophy, which is a form of faith. So, Longhouse, further north, is one of the most compelling images. It beckons us to Quebec and the St. Lawrence River, a part of Canada that is layered in such history. Next. James Edward Henry MacDonald, J.E.H. MacDonald, was born in England. He was an outstanding commercial artist, but decided to paint full-time in 1912. J.E.H. was a member of the staff and then principal of the Ontario College of Fine Arts. Many paintings show the seasons and their transitional permutations. J.E.H. dramatized this in his majestic October shower green. Next. Arthur Lismer was from England. Like most of the group of 7, he began his career as a commercial artist. An important art educator, he held important positions in Halifax, Toronto, and New York. Lismer was a war artist for the Canadian government during World War I. Listeners impressionistic, the guide's house appears to revel in the light and color of the natural world. Next. Frederick Varley was born in England. His diverse career included portraiture, commercial art, teaching at the Ontario College of Art and Art Association, sketching in Algonquin Park with Thompson, Lismer, and Jackson, and served as a war artist during World War I. Varley did some excellent portraits. This is a 1921 painting titled Sunflowers. Next. Franz Johnston was from Ontario. Experienced as a commercial art, he is best known for paintings of Lake Superior. An original member, he resigned in 1924 for teaching in independent painting. Johnson's Fire Swept Algoma brings vividly to our attention the terrible power of natural phenomena which surround us so closely and which intrudes frequently in our lives. Next. Alfred J. Casson, A.J. Casson, was also from Ontario. He joined the group in 1926. A.J. spent most of his career in Ontario and was commissioned for the depiction, committed to the depiction of Canadian landscape and rural villages of southern Ontario. A.J. Casson said, quote, "If I had to define my own contribution to the Canadian art scene, which was particularly mine, were really the rural villages and houses. In a way, it is a record of disappearing society and disappearing world. For me, it was always an Ontario quest." Next. Edwin Holgate was also from Ontario and Quebec. He joined the group in 1931. Respected teacher and printmaker, he was founder of the Canadian Society of Graphic Art and the Beaver Hill Hall School in Montreal. Totem Pole was part of a project in Canada's Totem Pole Preservation Committee in 1924-27. Various artists were engaged, including Holgate, Jackson, and 3 excellent Canadian women artists, Anne Savage, Peggy Nicol McLeod, and Florence Wilde. The object was to paint and record for Canada what they believed would be the last portraits of Aboriginal people. Next. Franklin Carmichael was born in Ontario. He was vitally interested in watercolor paintings of the Great Lakes and industrial and rural villages of southern Ontario. Carmichael was the youngest original member of the group of 7. He was strongly attached to the Georgian Bay area. His later works, like Great Lake, often show a more panoramic landscape. There is a smooth application of paint and simplification of forms and textures. Like Harris, he was interested in theosophy. Next. Lionel Lamar Fitzgerald was from Winnipeg, where he spent most of his life. He taught at the Winnipeg School of Art. Fitzgerald was invited to belong to the group in 1932. He was one of the first Canadian artists to explore abstract art, and also had a fascination with the Canadian prairies. Subjects are more simple and homely. A neighbor's backyard was shelved with a crockery jug. Farm yard was painted in 1931. Next. Canadian losses in World War I were horrific. Varley and Jackson were active in the war as painters for the Canadian government. Varley posed a profound question in his painting: for what? Was the loss of life necessary? have the sacrifice been worthwhile? Next painting. Both paintings raise the level of our emotional awareness to a high pitch. A.Y. Jackson also captured the brutality of war in a corpse. Next. In 1912, McDonald painted trucks and traffic. It was done in Toronto and brought attention to the erosion of land, clean air, and light. Next. Black Court, Halifax is one of the grimiest expressions of Harris's work. A millionaire, he was deeply conscious of poverty. There is little doubt of Harris's attitude toward the misery he witnessed. Next. Georgian Bay is a large eastern part of Lake Huron, about 100 miles from Toronto. Its shore is riddled with inlets and sprinkled with thousands of granite islands that make an exceptionally beautiful recreational area. This majestic Canadian painting is titled Frozen Lake, Early Spring, Algonquin Park. A.Y. Jackson tells us in an autobiography about painting with Thompson and Group of Seven in their beloved outdoors. Quote, the nights were frosty, but in the boxcar of the fire in the stove, we were snug and warm. Discussions and arguments would last until late in the night, ranging from Plato to Picasso to Madame Blavatsky. Madame Blavatsky was the founder of philosophy, and Mary Baker had an Annie from Christian Science. Late into the night, ranging, Harris a Baptist, who later became a theosophist, MacDonald, a Presbyterian, who was interested in Christian Science, inspired many of the arguments. Outside, the aurora played the antics in the sky, and the murmur of the rapids or a distant waterfall blended with the silence of the night. You mind if I have a martini now? No.
Oh, yeah.
Put a Italian white wine. I hope you're taking notes, but I'm going to give an exam after this. Okay. Next, please. Jackson spoke French and made an annual pilgrimage in the early spring to Ile d'Orléans off Quebec City. The small villages along the north shore of the St. Lawrence River in the Gaspé. Grade A Inventions was a rigorous work in Jackson's documentation of the area. Next. Although Jackson was the most frequent visitor to Quebec, Lismo also joined him from time to time. Their painting companions included Frederick Banting, one of the chief discoverers of insulin. Quebec charm was caught by Lismo in Quebec Village. Arthur Lismo said in his autobiography, quote, the typical qualities of such places as Georgian Bay, Lake Superior, the Laurentians, the Northwest Prairies, Rocky Mountains, the foothills, what grand pictures these call to mind. What a background for the elemental forces of nature to sport in. The aspects of winter and the fall, and the green riot of spring, storm and sunshine, against and on such a setting are truly epic grandeur. No timid play of subtleties, but bold and imaginative design. End quote. Next. Algonquin Park and Georgian Bay provided an endless inspiration to Tom Thompson and the Seven. Frank Carmichael had a cottage in Georgian Lake, which he called Grace Lake. Next. Mirror Lake in 1929 watercolor and reflects the untouched natural beauty of the area. Bay of Islands is one year later. Like Harris, Carmichael saw deep spirituality in nature and landscape unlike any other place. I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel God is in nature. Next, please. Several members of the group stretched the geography north. What was at the time Lake Superior. Harris, the imaginative financial support of the artist, saw in nature an awe-inspiring relationship to God. North Shore Lake Superior almost looks like an outstretched hand praying to the heavens. Next. The prairies, Rockies, and the West Coast intensified the concept and feeling of a Canadian image. A.Y. Jackson did some splendid work in the Rockies, but he was uncomfortable with the yawning spaces and the heights. Instead, Harris was inspired by them. He preferred the open spaces of Canadian Midland. Jackson also became increasingly interested in the plight of the native people. The newly discovered Western Plains and Canada's increasing awareness of native people is manifested in Blood Indian Reserve. Next. Jasper Park reflects Harris's interest for subjects in the mountains, sharpened by his interest in theosophy and spiritual interests. The Toronto Star Weekly said, Harris does not give you a mountain, but the platonic fabric of a mountain. Lauren Harris spoke for all regarding natural product. He said, quote, through our own creative experience, we came to know that the rich tradition in art is not housed only in museums and art galleries and in great works of art. It is innate in us and can be galvanized into activity by the power of creative endeavor in our own day, in our own country, by our own creative individuals in the arts. He also came to realize that we in Canada cannot truly identify he also came to realize that in Canada cannot truly understand the great culture of the past and other people until we ourselves commence our own interest, creative life in the arts. Until we do so, we are looking at these from the outside. Next. F.H. Varley describes nightlife. I'm having lots of fun, getting drunk with color and fat blobs of paint. And I'm getting away more and more from the fact it is good to create impressions long after that impression has been received. My Vancouver background for a night ferry is in New York with a cutout moon in the sky and a flurry of waters behind the boat like peacock feathers. A couple of lovers on the lower deck are influenced by the crazy moon and give me pale rose and dusky gold, while a stocky figure with sprawled legs stolidly stands with his back to the spectators, and you have to guess what he thinks. Night Fairy reminds me of the scream by Edvard Munch, an example of expressionist art. Next. In his book, Eastern Art, Edward Jackson said, the big ice packs are moved about by wind and tide, and we pass through the Melville Pack. We observe old ice floes and patches of blue ice, and ice lifted from the slope with mud and stones all over it. To make studies when the ship was zigzagging through the ice fields was very difficult. The old floes were fantastic in shape. Some resembled big mushrooms and were beautiful in color, lavender white on the outside and green blue under the water. End quote. The awesome beauty is seen in his Labrador coast. Next. The Canadian Arctic was the last extension of Canadian art pilgrimage and verification. Jackson traveled to the far north on his last trip in 1927, South Atlantic Peninsula, on the 2,700-ton supply ship, the Arctic. It was a revelation to Jackson. Next. Baffin Island has no trees, vegetation, and practically no people. It is nevertheless awesome in its beauty. It is mountainous with glaciers, deep fjords, fast-moving streams, and train flows of ice. Harris was in its glory. Next. Harris moved to Vancouver in 1940. Here he continued his geometric abstractions, of which abstract war painting was one of the strongest. A sphere, and almost favored by him in the 1930s, is partially buried with a jumble of 2- and 3-dimensional forms that crisscross like searchlights. It does have a meaning, an idea or message. There is form, color, and aesthetic structure, and all the relationships of the painting embody the idea of a living experience in a vital plastic creation. Next. MacDonald offered this advice to his students, quote, "Design from nature rather than copyright. You will find a general truth in the lines and masses and the varying details. The function of painting is to recall, to reveal, and to instruct. Only is it worthwhile if it is a record of which a nature that has power within it is of wide associations for many people. So much the better if in addition he has completed the spelling of the word A-R-T. We might perhaps take the 3 letters to mean association, record, or record, truth. All then is integrated in Johnson's painting, Woodland Tapestry." Next. Perhaps the most famous painting by Lawrence Harris is Pick Island. In 1923, Harris, MacDonald, and Jackson pushed further north and west along the brutal but beautiful coast of Lake Superior, where Pick Island stands dramatically offshore. Next. A member of the group of 7, Edwin Holday, was a Quebec-based painter who, like Riley, did figure paintings. He was a lumberjack, did all wall decorations, book illustrations, wood carvings, and was a teacher, Jean-Paul Lumiere. The cellist captures good hand positions and posture. My late wife and I are the parents of 3 children. My son is a violinist, he married a violinist. My daughter is a violinist, she married a composer. My younger son is a cellist, and he married a violinist. Nothing like having your own orchestra. Next, David Milne was a perfectionist and used an economy of style, and was a recluse. He was in the famous Armory Show of 1913, studied in New York Art Students League, and painted in the Catskills, Berkshires, and Adirondacks. Look for his painting. Painting, place brown and black, shows a fascination with dark colors in a free, abstract manner. Next. Laurence Gagnon, I'm almost at the end, okay? Laurence Gagnon was of Scots and French-Canadian ancestry, painted in the Barbizon school tradition. He lived in Montreal, Saint-Paul, and Paris. Twilight, Bay Saint-Paul shows a distinct village enveloped in a delicate bluish haze. Gagnon also illustrated a Canadian literary masterpiece, Maria Chapelain. I must tell you about that later. Next, Robert Roussel continued the French-Canadian tradition of wood carving. There was a dynamic cylindrical shape from a tree trunk. This marriage of form and material is called the family, la famille. It caused a scandal in 1949 because many saw in it nudity. The subject was inspired by the subject, the sculptor's own situation as a young father. Next. The 1940s saw a protest movement by Quebec artists, not particularly interested in the group of seven and against convention. They call themselves les automatiques, or spontaneous painting. This representative painting is devoid of all traditional subject and preconceived ideas. Jean-Paul Tortolano was a manifesto for refus global, or global refusal, which identified les automatiques. Here, the favorite tool is a palette knife to obtain an iridescent enamel paint surface. Austria was featured in the Vienna Biennial in 1963. Next. Alfred Berlin was an important Quebec artist in the Automatiste movement. Created many masterpieces in the studio, an old stone farmhouse from 1940 to 1952. Discouraged by the lack of interest in Quebec, he spent considerable time in Paris. He was able to exert a profound influence in updating Canadian painting. His work is closely related to Cubism and Surrealism. Sur la plage means out or in the region or country. Next. Horse and Trade by Alex Colville is truly enigmatic. What is Colville trying to say? Perhaps it is a collusion of two cultures, the horse and nature, the trade and exploitation. Well, it was painted in 1951 and is enigmatically famous, perhaps like the screw. Colville is a maritime artist. He applies his color use a pointillistic technique which he obtains gradual shadings and effects of volumes that are almost sculptural. There was a pictorial presence in this unanswered masterpiece. Next. Emily Carr is a Canadian icon, artist, woman, feminist in the big ways. Carr's distinctive contribution to a relationship to Canadian East Coast First Nation people. Notoriously suspicious of one's writings, these native people accepted Emily Carr. She painted village life in mystical totem poles. She worked in obscurity until she met a group of seven. They encouraged her, especially Harris, who included her in their famous 1927 Ottawa exhibition. Linden Harbor is an oil color. Next. André Bellier painted Saint Famille, the Holy Family, shows rural Quebec and its Catholic religious faith. He was Swiss-born, of French Huguenot, and Swiss Calvin descent. Quebec became his adopted home. The importance of this subject lies not in the religious symbolism, but in the opportunity for his eye and hand to deal with the color and massing of people as an expressive, purely paintable manner. The strong decorative pattern has an affinity to MacDonald, Thompson, and their influence throughout the world. And finally, Jean-Paul Lemieux, next last one, was one of Quebec's best-known artists. Lazare was painted in 1941. This large-scale oil on masonite measured 40 by 33. Lemieux was called to Quebec's nationalism, and William Matisse were nevertheless believed in miracles. You know, years back, I think I told you of my granddaughter, which I said about the seven dwarfs, and she said, no, Papa, the group of seven. It's very interesting because many of their schools have a group of seven paintings on the walls. And it's incredible. Not one smudge, not one thing has been touched. It's kind of funny, when she went to her high school for fun, every time the kids passed her, they bowed. So there's a sense of identity and nationalism in their painting. I'm going to play the music again, though, when we get a chance, because I think we haven't had a chance to hear it. But anyway, I'm sure you have some questions, and one of them might be, how did I become interested? Well, when I went to St. Michael's College in 1960, I taught there 50 years, a temporary job. When I was there, I started studying for my doctorate at the University of Montreal. So I went once a week for 4 years. You had to have a degree between the master's and the doctorate, so I got a licence, my associate and a doctorate. And so I saw for the first time the Group 7, and I said, you know, that's like our Hudson Valley paintings. It depicts a country, and you see the country through its people, and through its colors, and through its mountains, and through its rivers, and through its houses, and so forth. So that's how we became very, very interested. It's a fascinating subject, and most Americans have no idea. So many times people say to me, oh, Canada's like the United States. It's not. It has a different kind of government. It's a different kind of approach to politics. It has a different metric system. I'm not too bad on the road with miles and kilometers, but I don't understand kilos too. So they have not. They pronounce things differently. And they also recognize that 70% of Canada lives near the Canadian border, and it goes way out. And so it's different. It's different, and it was supposed to be understood that way. And Canada has 2 cultures, but it has many people, a mosaic of people. It has French and it has English. So you can't get a job as within the border, border control, unless you can speak both. So it's important. Besides, I like to know what people are saying about being an Italian. Well, anyway, have any questions, which I'm sure I can't answer. Any questions? You get one of the glasses. I can see who you are.
I have a question. These paintings, are they large paintings?
Are they large?
Large, like that large.
Yes, they're good size paintings. Very few like this. They're good size paintings. And you can see them at Ottawa National Gallery. But the best place, I think, is in Toronto at the Canadian School. Now this one actually has a cabin there where Thompson used to paint. He didn't want to live in that building, so he built a hut outside in Toronto, and he lived there. So he would go out in the morning, late at night, and paint, and then work in his studio. And he lived alone, and this was, the other artists were around him. But they have a replica of that besides many things. You can find paintings in Toronto, Montreal, other great cities, but the best is in this Michael, which is outside. This is for many, many books. I have dozens of books on Canada, French and English. The best one, I think, is this one, 7. And I brought some of my stuff to my see. So, when you buy a bottle of wine in the United States, it says Gallo, something like that. But in Canada, they have wine that had pictures of the Group of 7. And I had all 11 bottles. And I drank them all, too. And it's a nice wine, and they're proud. They want people to see who they are. Oh, nice.
Doc,
Another question?
I have a question. So, yeah, Group of 7, obviously there ended up being more than 7 artists.
Right.
Right.
There were 10 in all.
Well, there were 10 in all. Okay. And that, I assume.
Originally there was 7, one left to be independent or whatever, and so they added, but there were 10. We call them a Group of 7. And the inspiration is Tom Thompson. Yes?
So what was What was the group of seven? I understand there are seven artists, but how did they collaborate? Was this a social
Not really.
group?
They were a group. Sometimes they met in groups, but I don't think they met as seven often, maybe 2-3 times. But they knew one another's work. They met in different excursions and 2 or 3 at a time, so they understood one another. But I don't think they met as a
So who gave them the title? Who gave them the title?
So they really did communicate, but they did not meet regularly.
Where did they get the title, group of seven?
It's a long, well, because originally there was 7.
And who bestowed that on them? Who gave them that title?
I think themselves.
Is it
I don't
exhibit
know, I
together?
just think they met after Tom Thompson died 3 years later, and they said, we have to continue. He started this, he's identifying Canada, and there happened to be 7 paintings. You saw that one picture had 7. I think that's the only picture of them 7 at one time. Tom Thompson's interesting, we don't know. I think it was a little bit. He was obsessed with, not Nazis, but World War I. There was a German there in Canada during World War I who kept on saying how wonderful Germany was, and he hoped that they would obliterate all the Canadians. We know this. We know this. So we don't know. But his body was found floating in a river after 10 days. They buried him there and came back and removed his body to a cemetery in Ontario. He didn't marry. We believe very strongly that he had a strong love affair with somebody in the Adirondacks. I know there's some paintings here by Tom Thompson in the Adirondacks. They've got to be there because somebody wrote a book about his life and speculated what they thought, how his death came. The family here in Adirondacks was obsessed, mad about it. Don't you dare to talk about something personal like that. And so they told this person who was their nephew, never come around the house again to talk. So we don't know. But we believe there's some paintings here someplace. Anyway, look for them, okay, let me know.
Did they exhibit together?
Yes, yes, they had maybe 7 or 8 exhibits together. In Toronto, in Ottawa, and Montreal.
They were mostly based in Toronto?
They're mainly based in Toronto, yes. Yes.
Are you familiar with Rockwell Kent?
It was the
I-
same thing.
I'm looking at
Yes.
Harris's paintings,
Yes.
and Kent's are very, very similar.
Yes.
And he did, Baffin Island, Al Smith,
The founder
the Arctic,
The Vermont Symphony was Alan Carter, a dear friend of mine. He died in the late 1960s. We first came, my wife sang for many times. And his wife was a daughter of Rockwell Kent. I don't know which family, but
Right.
daughter. And so we knew her very well.
Uh-huh.
And she had many of his paintings in the house. And at the end, she didn't have any income, really anything except some Social Security. So she and her sister sold the paintings. Well, yes.
He's saying that he was speaking out against this German person.
Yes.
And he wasn't the person yelling about how wonderful Germany was. He was the one speaking out against him. And so those people may have murdered.
We don't know. That's one thing. He was an excellent outdoorsman. He worked there from April to November in the woods as a guide. So he knew how to fish, how to hunt, how to swim, how to be in the boat. And they can't understand how a rope tangled around his foot and he drowned. They can't understand how this would happen to the best outdoorsman in Algonquin Park. So it's I don't know, it's just a strange story. Going back, yes,
Do you know if Thompson left any notebooks or journals? Are there any written materials by Thompson? Notebooks, journals?
Not much.
Not much.
He was very quiet. He lived alone, painted alone. He worked in the woods from April to November. He was friendly with the others who were in the same building, and they shared talking, but not many notes. So we do have information, but not as much as what the others. It's interesting because they identified with Canada, with its scenes, with its country, what it looks like. And it looks like no other place. And so I think that's a wonderful, wonderful thing that they did. Yeah, any other questions? Yes.
Right up front.
Yes.
Any information about any European artists that influenced any of the seven?
Many of them were self-taught. Some did study in Paris and so forth. They were self-taught. And they didn't want to identify with, there were some impressions, but they didn't want to identify with any particular school. They wanted to identify themselves. So they painted what they saw, what they felt. I don't think there was any particular school, maybe some impressionism, but because that was the style of it. I have to sit a minute. Well, you know,
You want some water?
no, I'm fine. Just for something about myself, I'm 93, and I still keep busy. I give lectures. Next Sunday, I'll be in Manchester, New Hampshire, giving a workshop on Gregorian chant for 19 cantors. So, and tomorrow, my son is concertmaster at Middlebury Opera doing Fidelio by Beethoven, and I'll be writing a review for Opera News. So I don't want to sit in front of the TV and drink beer all day. I want to keep busy and take care of myself. So people say things, they mean well, but they'll say, when are you going to go to a nursing home? Well, when I have to go, I go. When are you going to live with your kids? I don't want to live with them because I love them too much. Yes. Thank you so much. Any other questions, you come over and talk to me if you'd like to.
Thank you again. Tortolano. And thank you to Tupper Arts for helping host this. And also just, if you're, whatever you're able to give, to donate, will go towards helping the programming of of Tupper Arts and the Art Center in Blue Mountain Lake. And be sure to, we both have websites that we've got a lot going on. As you can see, there are gallery shows here and in the other Art Center all summer. We've got concerts, the concert series here and down in Blue Mountain Lake. So please check out both of our websites, tupperarts.org and adirondacarts.org. Thank you again for coming.
As I said,